1965. India was still recovering from its defeat in the 1962 India-China War. The army was recovering and reorganizing. The economy was in the doldrums. Prime Minister Nehru had died in 1964 and a new Prime Minister, Lal Bahadur Shastri, was at the helm. On the other side, Pakistan was on an upswing. The generals under Ayub Khan ruled the roost. They had received new missiles, saber jets, battle tanks and howitzers from the USA. Its army was flush and upbeat. The time they felt was ripe to revisit their old obsession, Kashmir, seize it by military force and settle the issue once and for all.
The Pakistani plan was actually quite an audacious one, as their plans usually are. It began in April 1965 when their forces entered the Rann of Kutch, claimed the area as their own and captured the border outposts of Sardar and Kunjarkot. The well-equipped Pakistanis got the better of the border forces in the area, forcing the Indian army to send in more troops to stabilize the situation. A UN-sponsored ceasefire in June put an end to the skirmishing, and both sides returned to their original positions. But the Pakistanis had achieved what they wanted. They had diverted the Indian forces towards Gujarat, tested their new equipment, and now turned towards their main focus, Kashmir. The next phase of the plan involved sending soldiers dressed in civilian clothing into Kashmir in the guise of Mujahideen, a tactic they had followed in 1947 and again later in the Kargil War. They were to ambush Indian vehicles, attack posts, blow up bridges and culverts, and rouse the local population into revolt. In April and early August, bands of infiltrators entered Kashmir. But the results were disastrous. The Kashmiris did not support them and instead of helping, turned against them, passing information to the Indian army. Slowly the infiltrators were tracked down and one by one killed or captured. But then, rather than wait passively, the Indian army took the battle into enemy turf. They decided to capture the launch pads inside Pakistan, from where the major infiltrations took place. The crucial Hajipir Pass in the bulge between Poonch and Uri. On the night of 25th August, 68 Brigade inched up across the line of control, captured the outlying positions of Bedori and Sank, and inched up towards Hajipir Pass. In heavy fog and rain, a company of one para, led by Major Ranjit Singh Dayal, climbed up the pass from a difficult and unexpected route and assaulted the surprised defenders from the rear. By midday, the tricolour came up for the first time since 1947. Hajipir was back in Indian hands. The shoe was on the other foot now. Rather than make the swift gains they had hoped for, the Pakistanis had lost most of their infiltrating force and even vital positions inside their own territory. They now launched the next phase of the operation, Operation Grand Slam, an offensive directed at Chamb that was to seize the crucial Akhnur Bridge on the Chenab River and in effect cut off Kashmir from the rest of India. On 1st September, an infantry division supported by heavy armour crossed the international border, overran the forward positions, captured critical localities and headed towards the Akhnur Bridge. The outnumbered Indian forces were pushed back towards the line of the Munawar Tawi River, the last obstacle on the way. The plan was within an ace of success. But here, the Indians held on grimly, delaying the offensive and preventing any further ingress. But even then, the battle hung in balance and the situation was grim. If Pakistani attacks broke through, all of Kashmir was at risk. On 5th September, the Army Chief, General J.N. Chaudhary, asked Prime Minister Shastri for permission to launch an offensive in Pakistani Punjab and thus divert pressure from Kashmir. It took just 30 minutes for Shastri to make the decision that would change the war. The next day, 6 September 1965, the Indian Army launched its own offensive in Pakistani Punjab on two thrust lines, one towards Lahore, one towards Sialkot. In the Lahore sector, 11 Corps advanced with its 3 divisions. 15 Infantry Division moved from Amritsar along the Grand Trunk Road directly towards Lahore. 7 Infantry Division moved to its south from Firozpur, heading towards Barki. And to its south, 4 Infantry Division advanced from Khemkaran towards the line of the Satluj River. Around 100 kilometers to the east, the newly raised 1 Corps advanced towards Sialkot, Pakistan's second largest town in the Punjab. It was a bold offensive, but had been hastily launched and lacked coordination. 15 Division crossed the Ishogul Canal, the British-era canal just east of Lahore, and established a bridgehead across it. 7 Div too made good headway and captured Barki, a vital township southeast of Lahore. Indian soldiers reached as far as Batanagar, a suburb of Lahore, and the US consulate was hastily evacuated. But contrary to what is believed, the capture of Lahore was not part of the plan. By merely threatening it, India hoped to exert sufficient pressure on Pakistan. Taken initially by surprise, the Pakistanis reacted fast. They launched their own counterattacks and pushed the Indians back from some of their hard-earned positions. The critical village of Dograi changed hands thrice in 2 days and was captured twice by 3 Jat in bitter hand-to-hand fighting. And then the Pakistanis launched their own counteroffensive into Indian Punjab, headed towards Amritsar. Pakistan's 1 Armored Division, which had been recently raised and equipped with brand new Patton and Shafi tanks, was lurking in the Changamanga forest. But the Indians were not even aware of its existence or its presence. It burst out of its concentration areas and hit 4 Infantry Division, pushing it back across the border. The Pakistanis entered India and captured the border town of Khemkaran on 8th September. This was Pakistan's major success of the war, and the news was triumphantly flashed across Pakistan and the world. With Khemkaran under the belt, they advanced northwards towards Amritsar and the Beas River Bridge, a move that could cut off Punjab from the rest of India. There was initial panic, and it took the iron personality of General Harbakh Singh, the Western Army commander, to ensure that the units stood firm. Inexplicably, the Pakistanis delayed by a day, and that gave time to form a new defensive layout, a horseshoe-shaped formation in the area of Asaluttar, Bhikivind and Waltoha. The units dug down and waited for the Pathans with their meager anti-tank weapons. Sherman and Centurion tanks took cover in the high sugarcane fields, at times disguised as haystacks, as the roar of Pathan engines came closer. Indian tanks and anti-tank gunners waited for the tanks to close in, and then fired at close ranges where they could penetrate their thick armor cladding. Anti-tank jeeps roamed around, firing from the flanks. Abdul Hamid of 4 Grenadiers won a Paramveer Chakra when he destroyed 4 enemy tanks with his RCL gun, only to be killed by a round from another one. Actions such as these led the enemy tanks from one blocking position to the other, into ambush after ambush, and slowly their offensive began losing steam. And there was one more ace up their sleeve. The Indians had broken the walls of the canals and distributaries, flooding the area. In the boggy earth, the heavy Pathan sank axle deep, impotent and immobile, literally sitting ducks. The crew abandoned their tanks and fled. The infantry halted in the face of well-directed machine gun and artillery fire. The much-wanted offensive ground to a halt, and the Pakistanis withdrew back to the area of Khemkaran, which they held on till the end of the war in the face of Indian counterattacks. Yet, the area around Asaluttar, a name that ironically means the right answer, 97 tanks, some of them destroyed, most captured intact in mint condition, came into Indian hands. Further north, 1 Corps 2 advanced into Pakistani Punjab in the area of Sialkot. But their advance was jerky and hesitant. The initial objectives were captured and they advanced towards Philora, capturing it on 10th September. By then, the Pakistanis had reinforced the area. Indian and Pakistani tanks clashed in the largest tank battle seen since World War II in the area of Chavinda. Lieutenant Colonel Tarapur of Pune Horse received a PVC for his gallant actions there. Casualties were heavy on both sides, and though 1 Corps held on to 490 kilometers of enemy territory, the end result in this sector was inconclusive. After 21 days of bitter fighting, a UN-sponsored ceasefire finally came into place on 22nd September. The guns fell silent. India held on to over 1900 kilometers of prime Pakistani territory, but had lost over 3,000 officers and men, 180 tanks and guns, and over 60 aircraft. Pakistani losses were similarly high. India did hold the upper hand, but eventually both sides would move back to their pre-war positions after the signing of the Tashkent Agreement in June 1966. Tragically, Prime Minister Shastri passed away just a day after the signing of the accord. The September War was perhaps the bitterest and the most intense war fought between the two nations. Neither side could fully attain their military aims, but the war revealed a newfound willingness to take the battle to the enemy. It showed the grit and determination of the Indian soldier and helped regain the aura that the army had lost momentarily in 1962. More importantly, it set the stage for an even more decisive war. the coming war of 1971, which would cut Pakistan down to size and lead to the creation of a new nation.